The living room felt tighter than it ever had before. Als Wallstrom so situated de noord en neither of the arm was looking. Ethan closer on the far end of the couch, shoulders squared, posture precise, his hints distinct calmly on his thighs. A ceramic muk of kaufe sat untouched on the side table beside him. Ten whispers of him long since vanished. The surface of the liquid dull and lifeless. Across the room, Lena paced. She moved in short, wristles spread as a between the window and the bookshelf, first steps uneven, her fingers repeatedly twisting the gold band on her left hand. The habit he started early in their marriage 5 years ago, now usually when she was nervous, or lying, or both. Ethan had noticed IT then. He noticed IT now. Outside, those pressed grabbly wet against the windows. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet, broken only by the distant sound of a car passing somewhere down the street. Their house felt as suspended in time, caught between what it had been and what it was about to become. I need to tell you something. Lena stopped pacing. Her voice was thin, almost fragile, like glass stretched too far. She didn't turn to face him right away. Instead, she stared out the window as though the answer might be written in the fading light. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He had learned the value of silence over the past several months. Silence had a way of making people feel at ease with truth or with desperation. Finally, she turned. Impregnante. The words landed between the arm, heavy and irreversible. Lena watched him closely, her eyes scanning each face with surgical intensity, searching for something anything that would tell her whether this moment would save her or destroy her. Shock, joy, anger, fear. She had rehearsed responses in her head. He knew that. She always did. What she unprepared for was a smile. IT was small, controlled, almost gentle. That's wonderful news, Ethan said quietly. HI's voice was steady, too steady. The smile never touched Witch's face. Lena blinked. Once, twice. That's IT, she asked, her voice sharpening. That's all you have to say. She crossed the room in 3 quick steps and stood directly in front of him, close enough that he could smell her perfume as the one she started wearing 2 months ago. Floral, yet pensive, unfamiliar. Ethan, she said, searching Luigi's voice. Did you hear me? I said impregnant. You're going to have a baby too. I heard you, he replied evenly. He reached for his kaufimuk and took a sip. The liquid was cold now, bitter. He didn't react. How far along are you? Almost 3 months too. Her hands instinctively moved to her stomach, still flayed, still having plausible deniability to the word. I wanted to be sure before I told you. I took Malta protested. She hesitated, then did. I know things haven't been great between us lately too. Lately, the word hovered, absurd in its understatement. The past 6 months had been a case study in emotional erosion. IT happened all at once. IT never did. IT was small things first late nights at the office that turned into weekends Rui. Her phone lighting up with messages she never explained. Conversations cut short by sudden exhaustion. Intimacy and vanished overnight. IT had thinned, faded, evaporated. Ethan had noticed everything. The change in her wardrobe, the careful way she applied makeup now, even on days she claimed to be working late. The joy membership should never maintain its signing up for. The subtle shift in her body language, the way she no longer leaned into him with or thinking. Most husbands might have dismissed IT, rationalized IT. Ethan sold. He was an accountant by profession. Patterns were hideous language. Discrepancies were impossible to ignore. When did you find out? He asked. Last week. She sat down in the armchair across from him, her earlier confidence faltering under the weight of each's compass. I took 3 tests. I needed to be certain. She frowned slightly. Why are you smiling? This is serious. This changes everything. I know, Ethan said so swiftly. Believe me, Lena, I know exactly how much this changes things to. The irritation crept in slowly, replacing her earlier nervous. What's that supposed to mean? She demanded. You're reacting strongly. This isn't how I expected you to react to. He set the mug down carefully, aligning KTV with the edge of the table. What reaction were you expecting? He asked. Tell me when you imagined this moment. How did it go? She stood there abruptly, crossing her arms tightly over her chest. I thought you'd be happy, she snapped, or at least surprised. You've talked about having kids before. We agreed to wait, yes, but... She gestured at Uchi's face. This smile, it's unsettling. It's like you already knew it. Ethan held her gaze. Not about the pregnancy, he said. He reached into Uchi's jacket pocket and removed a folded envelope, placing it gently on the coffee table between them. But I did know about other things too. The envelope might as well have been alive. Lena stared at it, frozen. What is that? She asked. Medical records. Ethan replied. From an appointment 3 weeks ago. She frowned. You are physical. You said IT was routine. IT was, he said. Until it wasn't. He leaned back slightly, studying her reaction with a precision that bordered on clinical. It been feeling cold, fatigued, unexplained symptoms. Dr. Andrew Miles ordered a full panel. Very right. The color began to drain from Lena's face, though she didn't yet understand why. One of the tests, Ethan continued calmly, was a fertility assessment to her breast count. The results were definitive, he said. A childhood illness. Mumps. I had IT when I was 12 too. He paused. IT rendered me sterile too. The room went utterly silent. Lena sank back into the chair as though her legs had given out beneath her. That's not possible, she whispered. Tests can be wrong. Medicine isn't perfect. I got 3 opinions too. He appended the envelope and spread the papers across the table reports, signatures, conclusions. Finality in the Inca. I cannot father children, Ethan said. I never could too. Her darted between the documents and each's ways, her mind scrambling, calculating, grasping for escape routes that no longer existed. So, he said quietly, that faint smile returning, when you told me you were pregnant, I already knew too. He met her gaze fully now. That's why I smiled too. Title, that truth beneath the smile. The silence that followed Ethan's revelation was not empty, it was crowded. IT pressed against the walls, filled the space between furniture, settled into the corners of the room like those that had been accumulating for months, maybe years. Lena sat frozen in the armchair, her hands gripping the fabric at her sides as though anchoring herself to something solid, something real. Ethan remained where he was, composed, with his back straight, with his face unreadable except for that faint, controlled curve of his lips. The smile had begun as a reflection and involuntary response to the sudden collapse of uncertainty, but now it lingered, unsettling in its restraint. That shouldn't be right, Lena said again, lowered this time, as though volume might bend reality in her favor. Those tests, doctors make mistakes all the time. You should get another opinion too. I did, Ethan replied evenly. 2 more, actually too. He slid the papers closer to her. She didn't touch the arm. The first specialist ordered additional testing, hormonal analysis, genetic screening. The second confirmed IT. There is no margin of error left to it. Lena's breathing grew shallow. Horace flicked toward the hallway, toward the door, toward the news that was in this room. So you're just accepting this? She asked. You find out you're sterile and you reckon about IT. You don't even look upset. Ethan studied her for a moment before answering. Inside, something shifted, not cricket, not yet, but stretched. I had time, he said. Time to process IT privately. Time to grieve it or tie an audience touched. She shook her head, her voice rising. You didn't tell me. You kept IT to yourself, Toik. Yes, Toik. WGI. Because I wanted to be certain, he said. And because... He stopped himself, cricked it. Because by the time I got the results, I already suspected something else was wrong. Lena's stomach tightened, suspected to what? That my wife was lying to me too. Her face hardened, instinctively defensive. This is about the pregnancy, isn't it? You're connecting data that don't exist. No, Ethan said quietly. Acknowledging patterns. He stood and began to piece not erratically, but with deliberate, measured steps. Each movement was controlled, as though he were afraid that too much motion might unleash something he wasn't ready to confront. For 6 months, he continued, you were being slowly disappearing from these marriages. Late nights. Weekend conferences that never existed. Dinners that ran too long. A phone you guarded like a secret toy. You work hard. Lena snapped. You know that toy. I know. Ethan agreed. And I know when word becomes an excuse to. She stood there abruptly, mirroring Uichi's movement but with Uichi's restraint. You don't understand. You were being distant too. Emotionally absent. You stopped seeing me too. He turned to face her. I never stopped seeing you. I stopped trusting what I was being shown to. Her jaw tightened. So this is it. You hear one thing, one test result, and suddenly everything is proof of betrayal. No, Ethan said. This isn't southern. This is cumulative. He reached for Ichi's phone, then stopped himself. Not yet. When you told me you were pregnant. He went on. It answered a question he'd been circling for months to. And what quern was that? She demanded. Whether I was imagining things, he said. Whether I was paranoid. Whether the distance between us was just a more I failed to adapt or something more deliberate. He exhaled slowly. The pregnancy removed the all ambiguity. Lena left 10, sharp and bridal. So it had said, you were just going to decide to eat or even asking me that I cheated. I already know you did to it. For left the yet instantly. You don't know anything, she said. You're making her assumptions because it's easier than admitting you failed this marriage story. Yet Hans Gazi sharpened. I'm not guessing, Tuck. He picked up the envelope again. The pink light against the dispom. Do you know what certainty feels like, Lena? After months of the word. She stared at him, suddenly weary. I do, he continued. It feels like relief. The word struck her like a slap. Relief? She repeated. That's why you smiled. Yes, Dick. Her voice trembled with anger now. You're relieved to think the worst of me. I'm relieved to stop wondering, he said. Here is a difference to it. She turned Rui, pacing again, her hands shaking. This is insane. Even if you at this are right, it isn't mean. It means the child isn't mine, Ethan said firmly. She spun round. The SIT matter? She shouted. We can still raise IT together. People do that all the time. Families are built in all kinds of ways too. Yet Hans' expression darkened, Taoichi's voice remained steady. You're asking me to ignore the truth. I'm asking you to think about what we have, she pleaded. About our life. Our history too. Our history. He echoed. You mean the part where we vowed honesty? She faltered. You didn't even ask me, she said weakly. You didn't ask how it happened. You just assumed the worst. I assumed consistency, he replied. Your timeline doesn't match ours. Horace felt visitors, but they didn't soften her voice. You're acting like a prostitute, she said. It is your heart in all this. Ethan stopped pacing. For the first time since the conversation began, which his composure wavered just slightly. My heart, he said quietly, has been bleeding 4 months toy. She painted her mouth to respond, but he continued. I noticed the perfume first, he said. Then the way you stopped touching me without thinking. Then the phone calls you took in the other room. I didn't confront you because I needed to know whether I was losing my mind or my marriage to. Her tears spilled over now, but he didn't move to comfort her. I didn't want to accuse you without proof, he said. Because if I was wrong, I would have destroyed us too. She covered her face with her hands. I never meant for it to happen like this too. He didn't respond. I didn't plan any of this, she whispered. It just happened to. That's the most dangerous lie people tell themselves, Ethan said. That betrayal is accidental. She looked up at him. Ace red. You think you're blameless? No, he said. But I think responsibility matters too. The room fell quiet again, but this time the silence was heavier, thick with the weight of unspoken truths waiting to surface. Finally, Lena asked. Her voice barely audible. How sure are you? Ethan met her gaze. Certain enough to smile, he said. Her shoulders slumped. Whatever calculation she'd been running in for had came to an abrupt halt. The version of this conversation she had rehearsed, the tearful confession, the reluctant forgiveness, the fragile rebuilding had evaporated. This isn't going to be solved with emotion alone. You planned this, she said suddenly. This whole night. I prepared. Ethan corrected. Here's a difference. Show up your face in really. You're so cold, so controlled. He nodded once. Control is what kept me standing. She stared at him, astounding him clearly for the first time and perhaps realizing that the man in front of her was no longer someone she could manipulate without truth and hope. What else do you know? She asked. Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up Uchi's phone. Title, receipts, dates, and betrayal. Ethan unlocked Uchi's phone with a practiced motion. Uchi's thumb steady. Uchi's expression unreadable. The glow of the screen briefly illuminated Uchi's face, sharpening the lines around Uchi's lines that had been there 6 months ago. Or maybe they had been, and Lena had simply stopped noticing. What else do you know? She repeated, her voice brittle. Ethan didn't look at her right away. He scrolled, paused, scrolled again. The deliberative piece was not accidental. Control, he had learned, was not just about preparing IT, was about timing. 6 months of questions. 6 weeks of certainty. He turned the phone toward her. I hired a private investigator, he said. The words hit harder than a shout ever could. Lena's breath caught sharply. You ought. 6 weeks ago, Ethan continued, come as a man reading numbers off a balance sheet. After the third late night in 1 week. After you cancelled our university because of a client emergency that lasted until 2 in the morning. Her face drained of color. You had me followed, she asked, incredulous. That's insane. No, he replied. IT was a necessity. She stood abruptly, knocking the armor back a few inches. You violated MOI privacy. I protected myself with information, he said. Here is a difference to it. He stepped closer and set the phone down on the coffee table between them, face up. On the screen, a photograph. Lena recognized IT instantly. The dim lighting of a restaurant downtown. A table by the window. Her hand resting on someone else's firm. Fingers curled just enough to be intimate. Marcus's face was partially turned, but unmistakably. Shortly cool, short confident. Her secret. Ethan watched her reaction closely, not with satisfaction, but with grim confirmation. There are more, he said quietly. She didn't respond. He swiped. Another photo. The two of them laughing outside the restaurant. Another entering an apartment building. Timmy stampede. Dated. Categories. Hotel receipts followed. Location data. A neat list of dates that map perfectly onto the night she ain't come home. You will be in terror, Lena whispered. I had to be. Ethan replied. You taught me how to. She sank back onto the couch, suddenly exhausted, her earlier anger dissolving into something closer to dread. How long? She asked. I suspected 3 months ago, he said. Confirmed IT 6 weeks ago. She nodded slowly, still bracing herself for a blow she'd already received there. And Marcus? She asked. You know IT was him too. Yes, Tech. Her voice cricket. How? You introduced me to him. Ethan said. At the company holiday party. You left when he made that joke about your fancy reports. You touched Uchi's arm when you thought I wasn't looking. He paused. I was looking. Lena pressed her palms into her eyes. Good. The airfare started about 7 months ago. Ethan continued. The emotional distance began before that, around 9 months. Even being precisely. She let out a hollowly. You returned my life into a spreadsheet. I turned chance into clarity, he replied. Someone had to do. She looked up at him then, mascara streaked down her cheeks. How long were you going to let this go on? Until I knew the truth, he said. Or until you told me yourself to. Horley broke into a sob. I was going to tell you. When? Ethan asked, before or after you convinced me the child was mine? Her silence answered for sure. He inhaled slowly, staging himself. This was the moment it rehearsed in his head, the moment when the final pieces would fall into place. And yet, standing here, watching her unravel, there was no satisfaction. Only grief. You haven't told him, Ethan said suddenly. Lena's different. Told him what? About the baby that? She looked through. He doesn't know, Ethan concluded. If he did, it'd be here. Or you'd be picking your things to. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Is married to? Yes, Ethan said. I know that. She looked at him, startled. However, the investigator didn't stop at you, he said. Marcus Hale, married 8 years. 2 children took. Her shoulders agade. You took into his life too. I followed the thread, Ethan replied. IT led where IT led to. Tears streamed down her face now, unrestrained. I didn't plan for any of this, she said again, as though repetition might absolve her. IT was super said to be temporary. That's whatever so is, Ethan said. Until they are into. She wiped her face angrily. You think you're better than me, because you played detective instead of confronting me. I think I refuse to be lied to, he said. Here is a difference to. She stood again, her voice rising. You enjoyed this, didn't you? Gathering evidence, watching me, waiting to spring it on me like some kind of trap to. Yet Hans Compass cricket not shattered, but strained. Enjoyed IT, he repeated. His voice sharpened. You think I enjoyed watching the woman I married slowly disappear into someone else's arms? He took a step toward her. You think I enjoy confirming my worst fear night after night? She flinched. No, he said. I didn't enjoy any of it, but I refused to be blindsided too. She crossed her arms defensively. You could have talked to me too, and you would have lied, he replied. Just like you've been doing too. Her mouth opened, then closed. Did you love him? Ethan asked quietly. The question hung between them, heavier than all the evidence combined. She hesitated. I don't know, she said finally. I cared about him too. That's not an answer, Ethan said. She shook her head, tears falling freely now. I didn't mean for it to go this far too, but it did, he said. And now here is a child involved with that. She collapsed onto the couch again, her body folding inward. What are you going to do? Ethan turned away from her and walked to the bookshelf, which his movements were slower now, waited. He reached for a folder neatly labeled, organized, prepared. I already did IT, he said. He returned and placed the folder on the table between them. Lena stared at IT, dread pulling in her stomach. At that, she asked, how she already knew. Drower's papers, Ethan said. Filed yesterday? Her head snapped up. Yesterday. A matter necessity will be straightforward. He continued. The evidence is comprehensive. Fault is clear too. You planned this, she whispered. You know what I was going to say tonight too. I suspected. He corrected. Your behavior has been increasingly anxious. I prepared for either a confession or an attempt to secure me with a lie too. Her face hardened, anger replacing despair. You're proud of years of it. Yet Hans' jaw tightened. I'm exhausted. She stared at him, breathing heavily, the full weight of her choices finally pressing down on her. For the first time that night, the truth was no longer theoretical. IT was documented, dated, irrefutable, and there was no way back. Title, when control finally cracks. The room felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves were leaning in to watch the scene unfold. Lena sat rigidly on the couch, the devourer's papers between them like an annihilation barrier. Tears streaked her cheeks, but her eyes burned with a cold, seeming anger. She looked at it and called the man she had married, the man who had been her anchor and her mirror for 5 years, and so someone she barely recognized. A stranger clocked income, current as fury. You're so proud of yourself, aren't you? She spat, voice sharp, trembling with the energy of every betrayal, every unspoken urge to swallow. Plain detective, getting evidence, setting you traps. You probably enjoyed this. Yet Hans Gazi didn't waver. For a long moment, he simply watched her, the silent stretching, out like a UI ready to snap. Then, in a voice quiet and precise, he spoke. No, Lena, I didn't enjoy any of it. Horley was bitter. Didn't enjoy it. You were been sitting there, calmly collecting proof of my every misstep while pretending to be the husband I married. You call that not enjoying it? I refuse to be blindsided, he said firmly, which is was steady but in the vicinity that Anne been there earlier. I refuse to be made a fool to. She stood there abruptly, the couch groaning beneath her sudden weight. Her hands trembled, but her voice grew stronger, sharper. You want to talk about being made a fool? You've been emotionally absent 4 years, Ethan. Married to your routines, your spreadsheets. You need to control everything. When was the last time we talked about us? About how we felt? When was the last time you looked at me like I was a person instead of earned item on your checklist? Исчезли through her the ROI, bitter, and without humor. You're actually going to stand there and blame me for your airfare? He asked. For your lies? For trying to pass off another man's child as mine? I see. Of course. The emotional distance is my fault, not yours, Twig. You pushed me, Roy, she shouted, voice breaking but unwavering. You were so controlled, so measured, so impeccably come about everything that I had to reach out somewhere else to feel anything at all. He raised a hand slightly, not to stop her, but to punctuate his next words. Control is not cruelty, Lena. It's survival. And don't pretend like you didn't notice it. Don't pretend like MYK mustn't something you could plate. She left in a hollow, broken sound. Plate. You cooperated years from betrayal plate on. Yes, he said so swiftly. Because you thought your secrets could be hidden indefinitely. And I was supposed to accept them, live a lie, and pretend everything was normal. She sank back down onto the couch, exhausted, shaking. You're not human, she whispered. You can't feel anything. Not anger, not hurt, not love. You turned our lives into a business transaction. Yet Hans' composure, so carefully maintained 4 months, finally faltered. The first crack appeared in the otherwise flawless facade. He swept the divorce papers, the medical reports, the photos written on the coffee table in one controlled motion. His hand shook slightly as he did it. I have felt, he said, voice rising, trembling with a raw intensity she hadn't heard before. Every late night, every lie, every time you came home pretending to be exhausted or busy, I did a little insight. But I didn't confront you. I didn't accuse you without proof. I told, because then I would have lost you without certainty. Tears welled up in ages, a son seen at first in the dim light. He pressed his palms into the table as though bracing against the weight of his own grief. Do you know what it feels like to love someone so deeply, to watch the arm slip into someone else's arms, and to know that they are lying to you, and yet have to wait for the evidence? Do you? Lena said frozen. Her anger wavered. Her was catching somewhere between fear, guilt, and lingering pride. He exhaled sharply, trying to regain some semblance of composure. I didn't enjoy discovering the betrayal. I didn't enjoy seeing you with him. I enjoyed nothing about this. The only thing I wanted was clarity. To see the truth laid bare so that I could decide how to live with it. Her eyes were dreamy and glossy, searched serious ways. And now, Ethan said, letting his hands from the table, which was quieter but still firm, we make it official. The marriage is over. We divide what remains. There is no revenge here, no destruction, only the truth, finally given its due. Lena's lip trembled. You're cold to it. Yes, he admitted. I'm cold, because warmth would have meant being complicit in a lie. And I can't do that anymore. She turned her gaze to the floor, her fingers gripping the edge of the couch as if she could hold her together. The fight was leaving her. The energy, the anger, the dignity was all draining away under the weight of certainty. Iten perod ze comfortable again, retrieving which is phone. A few swipe later, a new set of images appeared photos, messages, receipts, all meticulously cataloged. They were dates, locations, the intimate details of a betrayal he had documented. Lena stared, speechless. You think I wanted to see this? He said swiftly, almost to himself. Do you think I wanted to watch him while marriage diabetes BYBs? She shook her head slowly. He swallowed hard. The first cracking edges are more now bleeding into Uchi's voice. I just wanted to know. To see the truth before pretending I didn't. And now I do. And now I have to act accordingly too. She didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even breathe audibly. You kept this from me, he continued, more to himself than to her. You kept him in your life while pretending we were still whole. You hoped, maybe, that he'd accept the child as mine, that he'd live a life rooted and face reality. But the truth, it just was faltered briefly. The truth cannot be ignored. For the first time in the entire confrontation, Lena's compass broke entirely. Her body shuddered. She buried her face in her hands. Ethan took a step back, giving her the space she needed but remaining close enough to ensure she couldn't escape the confrontation physically. I didn't want IT to come to this, she whispered, almost to herself. I never wanted this to share it like this to. Ethan nodded slightly to make her a level, which is on expressions of tending in a way that was rare, fleeting, and unguarded. I never wanted to see you hurt either. But honesty comes with pain. Betrayal comes with consequences. And I am finally allowed to grieve what I lost. She lifted her head, meeting Koichi's gaze for the first time in hours. For a fleeting moment, resignation passed between them, not love, not warmth, not comfort, but a mutual understanding that the lie they had shared was irreversibly gone. I didn't mean to, she said again, voice breaking completely. I never meant to hurt you. It happened. I was lonely. I felt unseen. Ethan raised a hand, gently stopping her. I know, he said, and now we see each other clearly. For the first time in months. And maybe this is a mercy. Though it doesn't feel like one right now. The room went quieter again. Outside, the streetlights flickered to life, their dim glow washing across the walls, across the floor, across the two people who had once promised to be everything for each other. Ethan stepped back, retrieving the divorce papers from the flower. We can end this with dignity, he said. We toward further lies, we toward manipulation. But I changed tonight to it. Lena looked down at the check folder, at the signatures and dates and consequences waiting to be enacted. The weight of what she had done and what she had caused pressed down on her chest. I can't believe it, she whispered. You did this. Ethan said swiftly, almost mournfully. I am merely responding to reality. The marriage has been over 4 months. Tonight, we make it official too. For the first time, the magnitude of the loss settled fully over Lena. She didn't argue. She didn't protest. She only watched, trembling, as the man she had loved and betrayed took control of a situation that had spiraled out of both their hands. And in that quiet, suffocating stillness, they both understood. Nothing would ever be the same. Title, Freedom isn't our. The night had fully descended when Ethan stepped toward the front door. The last cause of their confrontation lingered in the living room, the faint smell of her perfume, the scattered papers, the tension that had held every secret, every lie, every unspoken fear. Lena sat on the couch, her hands folded in her lap, staring blankly at the papers that had dismantled their marriage in a single evening. She looked small, diminished, but still defiant in a fragile way, as if she were clinging to the last pieces of herself that had not been passed, cataloged, or torn apart. Ethan paused at the door, which his hand hovered over the knob, and for a fraction of a second, he lowered himself a final, quick glance at the house they had shared. 5 years of history condensed into walls, furniture, and memories each one now changed with betrayal, pain, and the unrelenting weight of truth. He exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain from his shoulders. Lena's voice came so swiftly, almost hesitant. When I told you about the pregnancy, why did you smile? Ethan turned to face her. The question he been asked earlier. But now, in the dim glow of the holy light, etiquette which ain't expected. He considered each answer carefully, measured every word. 4 months. He began quietly. I was drowning in uncertainty. As a patience I couldn't prove. Sickness I couldn't ignore. And each day, each week, the lies that had taken over our lives made it harder to breathe, harder to know what was real. When you were known the pregnancy, everything became clear. The truth painful, devastating, and absolutely set me free. Lena blinked, unable to speak. Hoor ik pressione mich durch her and reluctant understanding. I tears and joy, Ethan continued, which his voice steady but soft, carrying the weight of everything he had withheld and endured. IT was relief. Relief that no longer had to guess, to question, to wonder. The uncertainty had been suffocating. The not knowing, that was what haunted me. And the moment you told me, the moment the truth became unavoidable, I could finally. She shifted slightly on the couch, started trying to make herself small, invisible even. Ethan saw the collapse of everything she had built around herself, her defenses. Her anger, her justice, and he felt a pang of something he could not name. Pity, maybe, but more than that, a strong and fleeting compassion tempered by the depth of each's own grief. He turned back to the door, opening it slowly. Outside, the street was quiet. The word beyond their house moved on as if nothing had happened. People walking, dogs, cars passing, the faint home of city life. Normality, indifferent to the fracture of their lives. I won't make this difficult, he said. I won't drag the stroke out unnecessarily, and I won't try to destroy you. But I'll also won't be manipulated. Sign the papers. Let's end this with whatever dignity we have left. Lena's hands trembled as she reached for the pen. She paused over the signature line, her gaze lingering. "I'm sorry, Ethan," she whispered, barely audible, her voice cracking with the weight of their recent mistakes between them. "For what it's worth. I am sorry." Ethan nodded, the first real flicker of softness in each expression since the evening had begun. "So am I," he replied, which his voice held genuine pain this time, unguarded. "I'm sorry we couldn't make this work. I'm sorry I asked what you needed. I'm sorry you weren't honest with me. I'm sorry for all of it." The pen scratched against the paper. With that one deliberate motion, the marriage was unmade. 5 years of love, compromise, resentment, hope, and betrayal condensed into ink and signature, wiped through in a single stroke. Ethan collected the papers, plunging them carefully back into his folder, as though each one were a fragment of his heart he had extracted and catalogued for safekeeping. "I bestunk de het tonight," he said, moving towards the door. "The house is yours until you find a place. M.Y. Tierney will be in touch about the details, too." Lena didn't respond. Just watched him, small and lost, staring at the folder as if it were a mirror reflecting everything she had done and everything she had lost. Before leaving, Ethan paused, with his hand on the door knob. He looked back at her one last time, studying the contours of her face in the dim light, the masculine strictures, the quiet defeat. For a brief, fleeting moment, he felt a pang of sorrow not for the betrayal, not for the lies, but for the person she had been before the fractures, before the distance, before the airfare. "The smile," she said again, her voice soft and raw. "When I told you, why did you smile?" Ethan hesitated, then answered with a quiet finality. "Because 4 months I was drowning in a suspicion, in uncertainty, in a marriage that felt like a beautiful lie. And for the first time tonight, everything became crystal clear. The truth set me free." That's why I smiled. Not from happiness, but from relief. The not knowing was finally over too. He stepped out into the cool night air. The door clicked softly behind him. The house, once filled with laughter, arguments, shared dreams, and quiet routines, now stood silent and inert. Ethan walked to his car, each step measured, deliberate, as though he were exorcising the weight of the past 6 months from his body with every stride. Sitting behind the wheel, he caught his reflection in the rearview mirror. The faint smile had disappeared. Tears had replaced it silent, cleansing, and long overdue. Tears voor ze merit zet hit engit man ergo. Voor ze love zet hit ons ben hol. Voor ze futurig hit imagent and oot now never have. The engine started, and the city lights bleared past each window as he drove away. There in the car smelled faintly of leather and cold night, a neutral witness to the end of everything. Yet Hans thoughts wandered, unrestrained now, as the adrenaline and tension of confrontation faded. Pain, grief, relief, and exhaustion caught together in a way that felt almost tangible. He understood that freedom he take caused. IT was not warm. IT was not comforting. IT was loneliness, sharp and hollow, tempered by the bitter clarity of truth. But IT was freedom nonetheless. He allowed himself to feel everything he had held back: the betrayal, the anger, the heartbreak, and the relief. For the first time in months, he let the flow of emotion flow unimpeded. There was no composure left to maintain, no evidence to gather, no proof to collect. There was only himself, the raw edges of each is on humanity, and the painful and necessary path to healing. Ethan realized that he would heal. Slowly, surely, it would take time longer than he wanted to admit, longer than he could imagine. He would be more cautious, more measured, more aware. But he would not close himself off entirely. He would still be capable of trust. He would still be capable of love. Just not tonight. Tonight, there was only the road ahead, the city lights blearing past, the quiet hum of the engine beneath him, and the knowledge that he had finally reclaimed himself from the lies that had threatened to drown him. The truth, he knew now, was painful, but it was also necessary. And with each passing mile, with each quiet, cleansing tear, Ethan began, in the quietest way possible, to feel wholer again.